as we enter into the sacred space of listening and receiving, I invite you to join me in this short induction ceremony in order to be fully open, receptive, and aligned with the information that is for your highest good in this conversation today. Begin by closing your eyes and taking a deep breath into the belly. And as you're breathing, bring your awareness into your heart center, making contact with the light in your heart. And find your heart light glowing, growing and expanding out around your chest. And now bring that light of your heart up through your crown center, through the top of the head, extending up all the way above you into central sun, making contact with the heart energy of central sun. And then bring that powerful energy down through the ethers into the crown of your head, down through your body, and into your heart center, expanding and joining with the light in your heart, and continuing down to the base of your spine, extending down all the way down into the center of the earth, making contact with the heart center of Mother Earth. And now bring that nurturing energy up through the layers of the earth, carrying liquid crystal plasma through roots up into the base of your spine, and then spreading into every cell of your body, moving into the heart center, joining with the light from above and joining with the light of your heart, creating a holy trinity of light within you, and then spreading out around you, holding space for your highest good, your highest awakening, and the opening to receive the divine downloads, encodements, activations, and light codes that are perfect for you at this time. Breathe that in deeply into your belly, allowing yourself to expand in this energy and opening to step in to the container of receiving. Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension, Season 6. We are exploring expanded states of consciousness. I'm your host, Waxéla Sananda, and today it's my pleasure to introduce you to Paula Munoz. Welcome, Paula.
Hi, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here with Shayla, finally.
Yeah, I'm so happy to have you too. This is a treat. So for starters, this is your first time on the Alchemy of Ascension show. So I would love to just let you explain a little bit about who you are and what your work is all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a feminine leadership and embodiment coach. So I support women that have been in that cycle of moving through the to-do list, going into burnout, really within the structures of the societal conditioning that most of us have lived in. And a lot of that is hypermasculine. So we start breaking down what that looks like, what's being repressed in our bodies, what's being held back, and creating more spaciousness within ourselves, more, like being able to clear the blocks, the emotional pieces that are holding us back from our true expression, from our true self, from our divine connection, and allowing there to be space for that. So that's a big part of my work. So it has to do with creation, creativity, creating with flow versus, the hyper masculine push and grind. And also with alignment, knowing your truth and being able to stay in integrity and following that. So yeah, that's all of it in a gist, in a pocket.
Yeah, thank you. And that's so important. And, I'm also an embodiment coach, a spirituality and embodiment coach or mentor. And I love that, all of the different ways that's important, how to embody yourself, how to get, because if we're not embodied, and especially, in the world of spirituality, it's really easy to get expanded and out of body. We are exploring expanded states. I mean, we love those states, right? So the thing is, when you're out of body, when you're not embodied, we're just kind of out here, which sometimes it kind of feels good, but it's not effective in in real life to be able to ground that, embody that, bring that in. That's what can really have us experience life in a much more like you said, in much more alignment and balance. So I love that you're presencing that for, especially for women and burned out women, which we have a lot of because we have so much to do. So let's start with talking about expanded states and really, what does that mean to you? What are expanded states to you? And can you give us an example of how you experience them? Or it could even be one in particular that was really profound for you.
Okay, so expanded states, we can go out and we can go in, right? So there's infinity out there, and then there's infinity within. So it's I feel like that ties in also with embodiment, because so often, like you just mentioned, the practices have point to going out, and almost the more out that you are, the more connected, or more the closer you will be to your higher self. But the truth is that the more that you look inward and create spaciousness inward, the more that your essence can fill you up. And through your physicality, you radiate your essence into the world. Through your creations, it all seeps through. But if you're just going out and then you're hanging out in, a lot of different realms, which can be very fun, 100%. It's not coming back in. It's not being anchored and integrated into your physical form. It's the sense that I get from that is like, oh, well, there's a missing link there. There's almost like your creative side is missing out on what you get to materialize into the world, right? If we're not really bringing it down and out. Otherwise, what is it for? So there's so much around that. And I know I feel comfortable explaining in this way with this audience, because I feel like there's an understanding of even just the sensation of we can go out and we can go in. And the invitation is looking at, okay, so often we go out because in hasn't been safe, because there's been something that pushed us out. And it might be something that's pre-verbal. It might be something that happened, at birth, when a traumatic birth incident, or we can go into so many routes there, so I won't. But basically, something could have happened that at some point there wasn't a full anchoring into the body, because it just didn't feel safe anymore. And we start looking out, and our perspective is on out there. If out there is okay, then I'm okay, versus, oh, I'm okay, and out there could be okay or not okay, but I'm still okay, right? That would be more of a secure attachment. But we're referencing out to make sure we're okay. So there's all of these different pieces, but that's kind of pointing to the importance of coming back into the body. And while it is so very fun to have like experiences out there, and you get to have those, like that's a full yes. And how can they be integrated into the body? How can you then like alchemize the experience from there and create something to be shared, to be expanded in relation to more people, in relation to your brothers and sisters, you know, of the world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's I mean, from hearing you talk, the what comes to mind is it's the amount of expansion that we have outward gets to be matched by our expansion and anchoring inward in order to be able to integrate those experiences. So you were speaking of, you know, like getting into alignment and flow states. Flow states certainly are part of what I would say an expanded state of consciousness. It doesn't have to be something, you know, like a drug experience or something that you go out of body.
Right.
It can very much be an internal feeling state as well. So I'd love to have you expand on like what is that? What is a flow state, or what is an internal state of expansion when that we can experience when we are anchored, when we are grounded, when we are in alignment? What does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yeah, and that's true. And expansion can happen in so many different ways. And the first piece that comes up is, well, yes, like we can get into a flow state where it feels almost like a dance with yourself in your um, in your creative process, right? Or in whatever process you're exploring. I feel like flow state for me happens, and I'm very creative, so I'm constantly creating, and it happens a lot in my creative process. So it feels like being in this um, kind of like a super highway, an energetic highway of just flow. It feels kind of like channeling as well, right? You're just like allowing spirit, divine essence, like to move through you and support in the creation. So it feels like this, like a, like a, whew, like a gust of wind supporting you in the process. And there's a sensation in the body of just full alignment. Like this isn't just you creating this, but this is um, like a full truth that is emanating from you and being born through you. And that's kind of the felt experience there. And then you mentioned something about more like emotional
Yeah,
anger.
first
Okay.
I want to dig into that a little bit
Okay.
because you were talking about a sensation in the body, which is a key ingredient, in my opinion, to any of these states and being able to sort of open up the portal, if you will, into those expanded states within. And so, and creativity is a huge key to that. I know when I mean, I don't claim to be a great artist, but when I do get into creative states, I do paint and sculpt and things. When I do that, it does like there's a whole different experience of life in those moments when I'm really in it, and you forget about time and forget about everything out there, and it's just about being in, you know, in presence. So when you talk about the body sensation, the physical sensation that goes along with that, what is that for you? What does it
Mhm.
feel like?
Yeah. So it feels regenerative. So, whereas sometimes we might be creating from a have to or a should, or, you know, and as even as I start naming that, you may feel like, if you're tracking me, you may feel just like a heaviness of like, boom, boom, boom. Whereas if we tune in to, oh, this flow state, it's a regenerative, energetic process. So as I create, I am nourished. Just like when you give to someone, I don't know if, like, I'm sure there's some healers in the audience, and you know, people that do sessions, things like that. So you may have noticed that when you're giving, when you're sharing your gift with other, there's a giving back, right? There's a return, and it's like this beautiful loop of giving and receiving. the same thing can happen when you are creating and when you're in this flow state, because it's moving through you and you're allowing that movement through. And as you allow for that to happen, there's a receiving. So it's this beautiful back and forth, supporting you, regenerating you, energizing you. So there is no burnout because you're in a flow of it. It's feeding you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. I know for myself, when, I get into these states, I'm in one right now where it's just pushing, like it's like birth. It's akin to birth,
Yes.
where it's labor, and I'm, birthing a summit and everything that goes along with that. And there's this tendency to overwork and get tired. And every once in a while, I'll go take a creative break, or go walk the beach, or something, go swim in the pool, something to move. Like you said, I've got to move that energy. Otherwise, I feel like my body gets rigid. Like if I'm just in front of the computer all day, at the end of the day, I feel rigid. I feel like there's no like regenerative properties going. Like I'm just stuck in something that's not healthy. So I feel like I also take sunshine breaks. I'll go out and stand in the sun, and just whatever I need to do to get the movement. That's such a key ingredient for me. And I feel like probably for anyone to keep the energy flowing, to keep things moving. Do you have practices like that? Because I know you produce a lot as well. What are your techniques for keeping that flow and that regeneration?
Yeah, thank you. And yes, like everyone listening, please give yourself this opportunity to move and just like you said, sunshine break, beach walk, just noticing when and it does feel that way. And for some people it might feel like, for me too, it starts becoming rigid, almost like my spine starts like getting hard. And for others, like if that doesn't resonate with you and you're listening, it might be that you start dissociating. You're just like no longer present with what you're creating, or you start feeling the weight of the world on your shoulders, right? These are different patterns that we run, and that would typically, like these can typically happen on, like, not just with work, but with relationship or with anything in life. So there's things that could trigger it, and then all of a sudden we're in a pattern, and it might be rigid. It might be like, oh no, I got it. I'm gonna lone wolf this. Or it might be just like on the floor as a puddle, just completely like, right? So everyone is different. There's no right or wrong. And for me, when I feel my more rigid, especially when it's producing, my practices are movement. And what that would look like would be, putting a song in Spotify, and I have a playlist for specific songs that I know, and they're labeled as kind of different sensations. So there's a playlist that helps me connect to more like rage, or like sadness and grief, or just love and joy that really that's uplifting or connecting me to my power, and just really allowing my body to experience what's there now, like really allowing what is there to be, and then without judgment, and then moving through it in a process. So there's actually a framework by Regina Thomas Hauser, and she wrote Pussy Reclamation, and she has a thing called swamping, and you could do a short swamp session that's like a three song thing, and you could start with like anger and rage, and then go into grief, and then go into pleasure, and it's really powerful because you're allowing all of these to be and intertwine, and giving each one its space. So that can be powerful as well. And or a different practice that I also really love is combining the different senses that we have, right? So like starting with breath, and like noticing whatever we're feeling, moving it, like touching it with, like we put our awareness of wherever that sensation is, and then we allow the breath to touch it. And we just notice that first. And you can play a song if you want, and then then after the breath, you might see if it evolves into movement. And then you might see if, oh, there's actually a sound that wants to come through you. You might want to meet that sensation with sound. So you meet that. And then you can then bring in touch, right? Like, okay, like, oh, okay, what does it feel like? Is it like tight in my body? Like you can mimic that for yourself, showing and supporting your body that you're there with it, not needing to change it. Like the intention isn't like destroy the ego. Like, no, it's just like, let's be with all of this. There's a protector here that's holding me tight. There's a part of me that's super scared, needing reassurance, right? So it's really being that parent that maybe we didn't have, or like that adult that didn't meet us perfectly, right? And we get to now be that for ourselves. And that starts creating a repair in so many different levels, like in attachment levels, nervous system level. Like it's so beautiful as we allow ourselves to be with what is for ourselves and to get to know ourselves that intimately, to be like, oh, this is what's coming up. This is why I got a little triggered here. And it's like, totally okay. Let's just be with that, you know?
Yeah.
Versus emotions are bad, like humanity. Sometimes when we go deep into the spiritual realms, there's a disconnect from humanity, right? Of like, I don't know about this human stuff. Like, I want to just be here in the angelic realms, or in like or whatever realms you guys like to hang out in. So it's just so important to create that bridge. Anyway, I'm veering off.
Yeah, I love that. It's reminding me as you speak of that. Are you familiar with ecstatic dance by
Yeah.
Gabriella Roth? It's, you know, the 5 rhythms and you move through those rhythms with your body, and whether you do it with a group or I've facilitated ecstatic dance, and that can really help with that release. I don't know if you want to call it release of emotion, but moving through whatever's up. It's like moving through those states. So is that part of somatic healing, what you're sharing?
Yeah, I mean, there is, I feel like there's somatic movement, and I feel like it is somatic healing because you are moving emotion through the body, and and like, yes, and it supports with nervous system regulation. It supports with attachment repair as you reparent yourself. But a big parentheses there with attachment repair is our attachment ruptures are created in relationship, like with you and other, or you and others. And yes, there is also self to self, but the bigger ones are self to other and community, and even then in like going further would be like spiritual realm and so on. So with attachment, the biggest piece is attachment repair is to be ideally healed and repaired through connection with other, with community, with whatever, wherever it was ruptured, you want to meet it in that spot because that's how the repair happens. So if it was with a primary caretaker or parent figure, it would get to be repaired with someone that can hold space for that, right? Whoever you choose, as long as there's safety and, all of that, but that's how the repair would happen. So they support you in mirroring what that true, like a true being, they would support you in being a true mirror for what that parent or primary caretaker, how they were meant to meet you and what was missed, so that then you could see that and then, mirror that back to yourself. And it's a nervous system piece. So for example, an easy one to explain for me, I grew up in an environment that didn't feel safe. So as a little one, you can imagine me as a little one here. I had to be very wary of, are they okay? And if they're okay, then we're okay. But like it didn't feel safe. So everything is life and death when you're little. So I was very hyper vigilant of like, okay, everyone's okay. Okay. but constantly checking like that. And that creates some that's a dysregulation in the nervous system when we're constantly checking, making sure, and it's fight or flight. So to repair that is me, yes, I get to check, oh, I'm safe. So there's safety checks, which is an easy exercise. And then there's also working it out with another being that can hold space for the safety that wasn't there. And noticing that, oh, this is my body. This is where I start and stop. These are my boundaries. This is what feels safe and what doesn't. This is how I get to then show myself, like my full being, with all the things, with the lights and the shadows and everything, that I'm safe and I can take care of myself and be the parent I didn't have. And also I have support to lean on, right? Versus, living in a certain way because of something that was imprinted really early on. And we all have different stories of what happened early on, and it shows up in different ways throughout our life. And a big piece that I just want to land with this is it doesn't have to always, it's not, you're not bound to it. It can be repaired, even if, as intense as it was, it can be repaired. And a lot of people that are very, very much in like the spiritual and the realms and going out, and there's safety out there, I totally get it. And there's something so powerful of having that connection of both, right? Like having it both exist and finding the safety in the body again, so that you can then like anchor in all of that beauty and wisdom that you can access into the body and radiate it out into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. What about someone who, as you're speaking, I was thinking about, I know whenever I do work with my past and things, I've done a lot of hypnosis sessions that have been helpful. But what about someone who maybe feels like they have something to heal, but they don't remember, or they don't know, or they're just not connected to what it might be? Does that tend to unfold or come out as they do this work?
Yeah. This is a great question, and I'm so glad you asked it, because it's normal for, first of all, if there was a traumatic incident, for our psyche to block it out. That's really normal, and it's a defense mechanism, and we're grateful that your body did that. So yay, you survived it. And in attachment healing, so the modality that I study and am specialized in is adult attachment repair method. So the beauty of attachment healing is you don't need the story. It can access pre-verbal content and information, right? Like, yes, sometimes you get it depends what sensory tracks you have and use. Like if you get visions, you might get a vision or a glimpse of something. You might start to remember more things, but it's really allowing the body to do the healing. And for attachment, like I mentioned a couple minutes ago, that there's some traumas that may have happened of, like, if you're hypersensitive or a sensitive being, and you were in your mama's belly and you sensed that the environment was scary or off, or there was some disconnect between mom and dad or something like that, that might have been something that affected you. And maybe you were born, and then that environment, you could feel that even more, right? So even something like that, we can't go to therapy and remember and like process it like that, because that's too mental. It's in the body, it's imprinted in the body. And that's causing you to protect yourself or defend yourself in certain ways right now as an adult that you may not even know are connected. And as we process that in attachment work, it's almost like the body, not almost, but it's literally the body leads the way. Sometimes in session, you're not talking and sharing a story. Sometimes you do share, oh, this glimpse just happened, but sometimes it's just the body could be shaking. It could be, you might be crying, you might be yawning, all of the different ways that energy is released. And it's a moment where you start noticing the body going into process, like it's processing. And then and then there's well-being, right? Because the body is incredibly intelligent and it will process in small chunks that you can take. So then it will be processing, and then what you notice, like what we notice in session, is process and then well-being, processing and then well-being. Sometimes there's resistance to well-being, and that's another piece. So it's just being in that dance with the body. So you don't actually need to know the story of what happened. You might remember it because you're being met in it. You're with another person going into that depth and that shadow that maybe if we look at it from a mental perspective, it's like, oh, that wasn't so scary. But as the little one, as a newborn, that was very scary, right? When we like, as a newborn, you depend on whoever your primary caretaker was. And if there's something off there, it's a life and death threat to the baby. So when we just know that and remember that, we can hold ourselves in so much more compassion for whatever is happening in our life. Like, whatever is triggering you, whatever is coming up for you in certain relationships, it's something that has supported you in the past, and it's something that's still trying to support you now. There's nothing wrong with you. It's actually something that has protected you, and maybe you don't need that protection anymore, and that's okay. And you can let it go, but it's like a rewiring to let it go, because it's maybe protected you for 20, 30, 40, 50, many years now, right? Mm-hmm. So it's it's the whole process.
Yeah. You mentioned shaking. So you see sometimes people go into shaking. I had a question on that just the other day. And I know, like, I do Dr. Joe Dispenza retreats, which I love to go to. And you'll see a lot of people like go into this intense shaking during different types of meditations and processing and breath work and things. Can you give your insights? What does that mean when you see a person shaking?
Yeah. And and as a shaker myself, like it's really an experience of your body. It's like a rewiring and a releasing of energy. So sometimes it happens through shaking, and it can look like convulsions, and it can also just look like not as intense as like full arches, right? It could be just like more shaking, or even when we're I don't know if any of you have been in an emotional state when you're maybe scared and sad, or like a combination of emotions, and you feel shaky in your core, right? Kind of like right before crying. I know I've felt this, of just like it's shaky in the core, and like my whole insides are shaking, and maybe my voice might shake a little bit. And that's my body really being with that emotion and allowing it to process in my system. Like it's touching something really tender. So when that happens, and when it happens with other, like we're being met in that, and not judged, not rushed, just being with what's there, it's such a healing experience. So yes, in the Joe Dispenza retreats, in a healing, like an energetic healing session, or in attachment repair work, like when you're shaking, it's just your body releasing anything that was stuck. It could be an emotion. It could be typically it's an emotion or a part of you that was holding on, right? Like there's like the tightness or the rigidity that we talked about in the beginning. Like as that releases, there can totally be shaking there. And it's almost like there's an unbuckling. You're releasing the energetic flow. So imagine if you're like this, and then all of a sudden your body starts releasing that tightness, that story, it will like probably shake. Or, you might cry uncontrollably for a bit, and you might yawn, you might, whatever it is, but just allowing the body to express what in the most natural way is ideal. Like you don't want to force a shake, right? But at the same time, I'm saying that with like, because I do love, like, shaking is actually a practice as well. Like it's a movement practice. So I personally practice Qigong, and it's incredibly supportive for just energetic alignment. And many times I start Qigong with shaking. So it's a different shaking than when it's energetic release, but it's just shaking our bodies to allow it just regulates the nervous system. Like you're waking up your nerves, you're allowing, and also rebounding, you know, it's similar. Like you're allowing the flow of the body to just be felt and experienced. And if there's an emotion and you're shaking, it also helps release and dissipate it. We even see that with animals, right? If you have seen two ducks floating in a pond, they get into a fight, then after the fight, they both shake and flutter, right? They do like, or like dogs, right? Like and then they're okay. Like, okay, that released that energy of anger, and now they're good and they're floating side by side again. So it's natural and it's highly encouraged. I even read a whole book around shaking by Osho. I don't remember the book's name. I think it was called Shaking, but he has very obvious names in his titles. So yeah, it's an incredible practice, and I feel like a lot of teachers have used it. And I mean, it comes. I think originally it probably comes from, you know, Eastern wisdom.
Mm. Yeah, hence the term "shake it off." I love that. Thanks for breaking that down. So, one of the things you said in your write-up is you said grounded spirituality is sexy, and I love that statement. Can you unpack that? How is grounded spirituality sexy?
Yeah, I mean, it came through when we were first talking about these topics together, and it is because as we embody, we're allowing. So our body is meant to feel pleasure and yum and delight. You know, it's meant to feel all the things, but we can choose to feel the pleasure in it and the yumminess. So as we allow more of our divinity, more of our essence, more of our soul to come into our physical form, like our physical vessel, it's almost like we're allowing more of our essence to radiate through us. So, I mean, that's very sexy. It's very simple. It's just like it's amazing because it's your truth. Like, what is sexier than authenticity, than like truly connecting deeply with someone, to just looking at someone into their beautiful eyes and just seeing the universe on the other side, right? And seeing the oneness and feeling that connection of like two hearts meeting each other. And this doesn't just have to be your lover or your partner, but like with the world, and practicing seeing that beauty and practicing feeling that connection with other. Like it's just it's very yummy.
Yeah.
And it's a practice, you know, it's not, yeah, it's a practice.
Yeah, it's like this presence that allows an awakening, and then allowing that awakening, and it's kind of the reflection back and forth. It feels like that. So grounded spirituality, being sexy, is really embodiment presence. Being present allows us to truly connect with another, and then simultaneously reflects that back to ourselves so that we can feel. And when we feel and we're present, we experience more of everything.
Yeah.
So, as we're moving into the end of our time together, I would love to just offer it up to you. I know there's so many different topics that we could talk about, but what is it that that you'd like to leave everyone with, or share, that maybe I didn't get the question asked or didn't get around to asking you? What do you feel like is important for our audience to hear from you today?
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, a big piece that's coming through is just remember to feel. Like, just remember to feel, and feelings are temporary, like emotions are temporary, and if we allow them through, they hold so much wisdom. And our bodies are meant to move our emotions and meant to feel all the things. And it's okay that there's so many. It's okay that, you know, it's okay that we're feeling. And just an invitation. My invitation is for you to just remember that your body's on your team. It is part of your divinity, right? Because sometimes there can be a disconnect with our humanness and our divine essence. And the more that we separate it, the more that we're like making one wrong. There's more duality there versus being in the and, being in the union, being in the oneness. Because there's body, mind, spirit. It's like the trinity of divinity. And when we ignore one or make one wrong, like so often, like I mentioned before a little bit, like the ego is bad. It's like, no, the ego is a protective part of you. It's supported you to survive. So we don't want to make anything that you have right or wrong. It just is. And your being can be with all of it. So when you have an emotion, and you get to feel it in your body. Like if it's here, you bring it into your body, you allow it to flow through, you can dance it out, whatever it is that it wants to do, you can shake it out. So it's just so important for that to be grounded, for all of you to be okay, all of you to be accepted and present. And I feel like that's just such a key piece. So if anything, please take that invitation.
Absolutely. Feeling is the secret, and we got to be able to feel, to be present, and to be embodied. Thank you for that. Anna Paula, thank you so much for all the wisdom and everything that you're offering today. And thank you to everyone watching. I appreciate you. I hope you got some great nuggets out of this conversation today. Have a beautiful day or evening. Namaste.